Hello, and here we are at Chapter 20, our final session for Consumer Behavior Marketing 3620. I'm Dr. Greer again, and wow, what a journey we have made. And we've talked about so many concepts and so many things. And today what we're going to wrap up with is marketing to children. And this is a very important topic, and I think it's one that we all just need to be aware of as marketing professionals. And so we're going to talk about regulation and consumer behavior, how these things go together, because in reality, there's a lot of laws and legal things that you need to know about. And I like to, just say a lot of it revolves around kids and making sure that we don't lie to people, that we give them the proper instructions so that they know exactly what's happening when we do this marketing. So let's jump into it. We're at the very end of this whole process. We've used this framework. Once again, there are many frameworks. This is one. But I will tell you once again that this is a really good way to approach consumer behavior and marketing and have a systematic approach so that you can be making correct decisions as you help a company do its marketing. So we're going to talk about some major concerns with marketing to children, the CARU Act. We're going to talk about some FTC regulation. Then we're going to just talk about, doing things right with even adults towards the end and how the law influences that. So regulation and marketing to children. First off, I don't know if you are aware, but this all kind of stems from cigarette companies marketing to children. They came out with Joe Camel, which was an animated figure. It was cool to smoke, and that really kind of set off this whole concept of are we as a society going to allow individual companies to market to children in a certain way? And I always like to think about Saturday morning cartoons. Now, that's probably not as big of a thing as it was when I was a kid, but in kids' shows, they have advertising. And we just have to realize, what's the line they're walking between truthfulness and not truthfulness, I would say, bending the rules a little bit. So there are concerns about the ability of children to comprehend commercial messaging. Now, we get tricked as adults into thinking things are amazing. Think about what children are doing when they don't even have a fully developed frontal lobe. Many of the people in this class aren't 26, 27, which is when that happens, and you understand the long-term consequences for your actions. So it's just an interesting concept, I would say, or construct, that we need to make sure that we are taking care of the psyches of children, that we don't stick them into dogmatic thoughts for the rest of their life based on advertising and marketing. And then there's some privacy issues that we need to talk about. So the National Advertising Division of the Council for the Better Business Bureaus is the primary self-regulatory body of the American advertising industry. And the Children's Advertising Revenue Unit, or CARU, is a special unit created by the body to review advertising aimed at children. Now, if you have a competitor that's doing something nasty, you can report them to this group. They will take a look and they will assess what's going on. And they also go out and proactively just look for advertising and try and determine whether or not it's proper. So there's two major issues when it comes to comprehension with children and advertising. The first one is that, do children understand the selling intent of commercials? And there are many different types of commercials that are out there in marketing materials. Some of them are meant to not look like advertisements, and that is done intentionally so that it can feel more organic. The second question is, can children understand the words and phrases in commercials? Or are they just getting what's implied by it? Like, I'm going to be a better basketball player if I buy Air Jordans or something like that. So these are the two big things that come up when we start talking about that, when it relates to children and comprehension. So there are some guidelines with CARU as it relates to information processing. And we can see that claims should not unduly exploit a child's imagination. Okay. While fantasy using techniques such as animation and computer-generated imagery is appropriate for both younger and older children, it should not create an unattainable performance expectation, nor exploit the younger child's difficulty in distinguishing between the real and the fanciful. I like to share the story about when I was a child. There was this toy truck. I was probably 10, maybe 8. And it was called The Animal. And I still remember the jingle, "Nothing can stop the animal." Like, it was this thing. And it was this toy truck that you could turn on, it would drive. But if it hit terrain, you could push a button and these claws would come out and would just claw its way up. And my friend Sean got this truck, and we were like, we have the animal, we can go up this hill. And we went out there, we turned it on, we extracted the claws, and it was like, it just didn't do anything. And I remember thinking, well, that was a disappointment, because what had been portrayed on TV was like this thing could climb up anything. And it wasn't like it was an impossible hill. We just thought it would be able to go up. So our imagination had gone like farther beyond what it could do with camera work and stuff like that. So it's really important that we should just make sure that children, when we're marketing to children, A, it's a sticky situation, but B, we do it in a sincere way that doesn't manipulate. Now, there's some health and safety. There's some values that come out. There's some guidelines that we have to participate in when we're doing that. Now, we are not supposed to sell to children. We can market, but we need to make sure that we're not trying to persuade them too strongly for something. So advertising should not urge children to ask parents or others to buy the products. Ooh, that seems weird. It should not suggest that a parent or adult who purchases a product or service for a child is better, or more intelligent, or more generous than one who does not. Like, if your dad loved you, he would get you a Nintendo Switch. Like, that will just never fly. And advertisers should not convey to children that possession of a product will result in greater acceptance by peers, or lack of the product will result in less acceptance by the peers. So, you can't say, oh, if I have these shoes, I'm going to be accepted, and show somebody ostracizing because they don't wear Nikes or something like that. These are just very important things. So I would encourage you to go through all these tables in chapter 20, because they're important to just keep in mind. Now, advertisers should not portray adults or children in unsafe situations. So they got to wear bike helmets if they're on a bike. They got to have the right protective gear on, because they can't be acting like you can do these things without that stuff on. So it's very very important that be part of it. Now, there are some controversial marketing activities that have been happening over the past decade, reaching out to children. One of them is that mobile marketing in children, and we'll talk about that in a second. The commercialization of schools and internet marketing in children. So let's talk about mobile marketing in children. I am constantly amazed. I have a couple nieces that are newly born. How quickly we have adjusted children to the third screen, to our cell phones or our iPads, and how that becomes just like a magnet to them. It's pretty funny. My youngest son, who is 13, he'll sit in my beanbag chair that I have, my love sack. He'll sit in that with his Switch, an iPhone over here, playing Pokemon Go and having the TV on. And I'm like, wow, there's just not enough stimulation on one of those screens for him. It really makes me like wonder, like, wow, I don't know if I could do that myself. I mean, I'll have my phone out and watching TV, but that and my Xbox or something, like, these are things that are interesting. So there are a lot of mobile phone marketing concepts that are happening now. We probably heard that kids bought a bunch of coins in an app, or bought a bunch of donuts in the Simpson app. Texting. There's a lot of mobile advertising that happens, and we just need to make sure that we educate our children. But as marketers, we need to make sure that we're not exploiting children. And so we need to be very aware of what we're trying to do when we look at those devices, and how we approach them as marketers with that demographic. Another issue that's come up is the commercialization of schools. So a lot of times, like, Coke will go in and say, we own all the vending machines. Essentially, they give the school a great deal, and then they get everybody into Coke or Pepsi or their Gatorade or whatever. Like, they will try to build brand loyalty through owning the vending process at a school or athletics. They'll go in and they'll give the school some money and say, hey, you're a Nike school or you're an Adidas school. These are all things that we just need to make sure that are highly watched and done properly. Putting ads in a classroom or in-school ads for, like, just do it. Like, all those things sound cool in some ways, but they can actually do a lot of manipulation. So they have to be very, very regulated, I think is the word right now. And then finally, internet marketing in children. So I always like to say, whenever I talk to people, because I used to be a dean of technology, that one of the things that's fascinating to me is that psychologically, the internet, as marketers, we make it as addictive as we can for adults. I don't think children have a chance. And so you have to be very careful and very responsible as a marketer when you're dealing with the internet marketing to children. So there's two major concerns that have emerged. The first is invading children's privacy, telling them where you're from. Like, like there's a lot of stuff that can happen that's negative on the internet. There's a lot of positives. I'm not saying that the internet isn't a place for children, but I'm saying that we need to make sure that we, as marketers, do our part to be good internet global citizens, to not manipulate children. And then that kind of comes to that second one where it's like, okay, well, if they download Toon Blast on an app and they're like, but mom, I need 100 more coins so I can pass this level. It's pretty dirty, and I would just say scuzzy to do that, because you know what you're doing. You're manipulating a child to go talk to their parent, and it's just it's a tough world out there for internet marketing and children. So we need to be careful to not add any negatives to that. Based around that, there's the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPA. It's an online privacy that relates to the collection and use of information from websites. Over the past decade, this has become a really big deal, not just for children, but for individuals, selling data, locations, what they're looking at, all that stuff. It's pretty interesting. Now, COPA was passed in 1998. The FTC issued the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule, aka the rule, in 1999. And there's just some things that I think would be good to look at in here. So, key provisions under the rule. This is operators of all commercial websites and online services directed to children under 13 that collect personal information from children. Okay, these are some caveats. So privacy policy, post privacy policy on the homepage of the website and link to the privacy policy everywhere personal information is collected. Now, there's a new law with cookies enabled, and I can't remember what it's called over in the GDR or GDPR in Europe. This has gotten a lot more intense for everybody. So if they're going to collect cookies, you have to be aware, you have to accept or decline, right? Parental notice, that you have to provide parents notice about the site's information, collection of practices. Parental consent, that they have to be, the parents have to approve that this stuff is going to go out. Conditional access, do not condition a child's participation in an activity on the disclosure of more personal information, so you can't ask for the information. Confidentiality, maintain the confidentiality, security. It's just a tough place to be in, regulatory wise, if you're building a website for children. So that's one of the things to think about when we're doing that marketing. And now let's take those and pivot them into adults a little bit, which I think is just important. So children, lots of rules. Now adults, the rules are a little more lenient, but there are some very specific things that we need to be looking at. So first off, FTC privacy. Privacy by design. Consumers should promote consumer privacy through their organizations and at every stage of the development process. This is one of those that I think has really gone away over the last decade. A lot of what is done now, I will say, taking, for instance, COVID, the government actually wanted to collect a lot more information, and Google and Apple, of all things, Google and Apple have stepped up and said, no, we won't give you that information on their phones. Now that's kind of a shocker, because I would say normally that would be Apple's position, but Google feels very strongly about that also when it relates to disclosing COVID-19 symptoms and who hasn't, and who's been contacted by someone like that. So it's very interesting. Now, these are the rules. It doesn't mean everybody follows them. So like when we look at simplified choice, companies should simplify consumer choice. Companies do not need to provide choice before collecting users' data for commonly accepted practices such as product fulfillment. You have to be careful on everything you're asking. And I think it's almost getting to the point where we as companies want to not collect as much information because you become responsible for it. And we've heard about all these leaks, these hacks that have happened. There's plenty of that has happened in the news. So it's pretty interesting to see. And also with the new rules, that transparency is a big deal, where this part 3, where you can go on and see where your data is being used from. Now, I probably have said this before. I think Facebook's the devil. I love Facebook because I've used them as a business. I made a lot of money using Facebook. I think YouTube's very similar, but they are collecting everything. Facebook's just nefarious because you give it all the information and then they turn around and sell it. And that's like a marketer's dream, is that you can find out anything about anybody because they're voluntarily giving you that information. Um, I think Facebook has made great strides in showing this is the data that we have on you. This is what we sell to people. This is what you can delete. You can set it up to automatically delete, I think, after a certain amount of time. Those are all positive moves, but I don't know how realistic they are in the long term because Facebook is built around selling your data. Just as a side note, you never get anything for free. So if you think, oh, Facebook isn't doing anything, well, the only reason that you get free access to Facebook, they don't charge you $50 a year, is because they do sell all that. And they make a lot of money out of it. So when we're talking about marketing communications, there's three areas that we want to talk about here: advertising and values, consumer information accuracy, and adequacy of consumer information. Now, these three components of marketing communications are vital, and there's a lot of regulation based around them. We're going to jump into information accuracy and deception. Deception can occur even though a direct false claim has not been made. So we have a direct claim, a logical implication, or pragmatic implication. That means, like, there's the funny one. I don't know if it's even real or if it's a wives' tale, but someone sued Red Bull for saying Red Bull gives you wings. Right now, they misspell wings when they do it. We call that puffery. Okay, so but you can't say if you're sick, you'll get better with X. Right? If you say that, that's a direct claim. You need to have proof. Or if you say, 5 other people were sick and they started using this product and now they're better, that's a logical implication that they started using the product there. You can't do stuff like that. Firms can also be held liable for false logical and pragmatic implications that they create. So, for an example, if Weedex fights weeds, many would understand fight to mean kill. If it doesn't do that, then you're in trouble. And so, if Weedex doesn't kill his weeds, then the pragmatic implication would be false. So, you just want to make sure that you're not ever saying something that isn't true. And you're like, well, there's a lot of people that do that. No, I mean, there are. Let me be honest. There are, but they're going to get in trouble with the FTC. As a marketer, what we always want to do is be above board, be in the noble position, take the high road. I really firmly believe you always come out on top if you do those things. And then we need to make sure that there's enough information out there. So, for instance, when caloric count went up on menus in a lot of states, a lot of people were freaking out about that. And I'm not here to debate whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm here to just say it does give consumers more information. So they can go up and say, oh, the cheeseburger is 1,200 calories, the salad's 900 calories. Which one do I feel like taking? Where's the 300 calories going to go? So the FDA label rule deals with these kinds of things. So they put trans fats on there. Now you can pick up an ice cream and you can look at the back and say, oh, there's 3 grams of total fat, 6 grams or 9 grams of total fat, 6 grams of trans fats. You can see what the daily intake is of that. This is just a way to empower consumers. So you can definitely see that, like on this, Eddie's is using that to differentiate what they're, you can look it up and see exactly what it is. So regulation is important. You can get in a lot of trouble. Okay. Let's just make sure that we practice proper marketing. I have been so grateful to have you in this class. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I love this topic. I am so excited for you to go out in the world, use this information. I know that you are going to be a better marketer because you understand a little bit more about consumer behavior after this class. Remember, always think about the consumer when you start constructing your marketing. I promise you, when you forget about yourself and you think about the consumer, more consumers will come to you. You get what you want when you do stuff for other people. So thank you from Dr. Greer here. I appreciate you. You've been wonderful, and I hope that this has been helpful for you too. Bye-bye.